and it just always takes me 2 takes to do the intro. Yeah, exactly, giving away the secrets. Right, here we go then. Welcome then, everyone, to a new edition. See, I knew I'd fluff it right from the start. That's right, it's the first take gone, it's fine. Well, welcome everyone to a new edition of Rugby League Down South. This, another special podcast where I've gathered a few Rugby League Down South fans for a discussion really about the season ahead, 2014, their thoughts and hopes and feelings about the Broncos. We'll talk about the championship, we'll talk about the restructure and maybe even the Sky TV deal. All sorts of stuff, all sorts of topics to be covered in the next hour. We did one of these, it was, I don't know, maybe, about 6 months ago maybe. Gathered a few people. I mean, we say it's the Pubcast, it's some people sat around the table chatting. We're not in the pub officially, although we wish we were, and we may well be at the end of the programme. But we've got to find a nice quiet room. Thank you to Mark, who sat next to me here, who secured a room at his workplace. So Mark, thank you for that initially. So let's start first of all by introducing ourselves, and to make sure we start with a positive. I want you to tell me what you're looking forward to in 2014. So one of the things that you're looking forward to in 2014, and tell us a bit about who you are and where you're from as well. So let's start with Mark, who kindly has organised this stream for us. Mark.
Hello, Ramo. I've been supporting London Broncos for 9 seasons now. I can't wait for the season starting on Sunday. I've missed a game over the last 4 or 5 months. Went through a period of sort of not really being interested during the World Cup because of the possible threat of the Broncos going out of business, but since December the 13th I've been really pleased about the idea that we're on the starting line again. Really looking forward to the new season, especially with a full suite of new signings.
Cool, brilliant.
Hi, I'm David Ballheim. I'm a freelance rugby league journalist. I've been following the London Rugby League franchise, as I better call it, since the first season as Fulham way back in 1980. I haven't missed a season. I haven't missed a home game in about 10 years, and that includes the ones in France and Wales. So the fact that there is a team is the biggest positive. I didn't think it was going to happen. I thought last season was the end. It isn't. That's very good news. It's going to be a very hard season, but we're there, and if we're there, we've got a chance. I don't think we'll win the grand final this year, I've got to be honest, but hey, we're still around. That's the important thing.
Hi, I'm Richard Waller. I am the administrator for all Southern match officials for the RFL. I'm here today predominantly as a fan now, so my views don't represent the RFL. Predominantly for 2014, as a fan, I want to see us build on the euphoria of the World Cup, which I think was a terrific World Cup. And I want to see the positivity, not just in London, but for the game in general, and I want to see it be taken forward. And I hope we get a chance to cover that today.
Hello, I'm Michael Blair-Myers. I've been a London Broncos fan for 2 years, mainly a football fan, but having got a free ticket from the Broncos at the end of 2011 at the St Helens game through the Evening Standard, I've been hooked ever since. Oh, and hopefully we finish 12th.
Hello, I'm Mark Reynolds. I've probably been watching London Broncos now for 7 or 8 years. Been watching rugby league quite a long time. I'm originally from Dewsbury, and I'm so old I can remember Steve-O's first game for Dewsbury. So that's one thing. What I'm hoping for, we're starting afresh, we're starting anew. We've got some young players in, and all I want the players to do is show some commitment and just go forward. We might not win every week. I don't expect us to win every week. But if we see that commitment from the players, at least we know the club's moving forward. And who knows what might happen. If we don't even manage to stop up in the league, which I hope we will do, I'm sure that people around will make sure that we're still about for next season, and the following season we will be back in Super League with an even better side.
Hello, I'm Janet Symes. I'm a lifelong rugby league supporter, and I've been watching Broncos on an occasional basis since I moved to London, but getting more and more regular. I'm absolutely delighted that Broncos are continuing. I think it's really important to have a team from London in the Super League. And I'm really looking forward to, with a new beginning, bringing new people in to watch the game and for them to get hooked on rugby league in the same way as I am.
Nigel Coase, Broncos fan for I know, a dozen years, but I did go to the very first game at Fulham. I honestly don't know what I'm looking forward to this season. Perhaps my first visit to the Hive when Catalan Dragons there on Maundy Thursday.
Hi, I'm Ryan Cousins, media manager for Oxford Rugby League, but also a London Broncos fan. I've been a fan for about 6 years now. What am I looking forward to? Well, I think it's great that London have got a Super League club. I think that's a must, and there's been a lot of negativity, but now it's for a fresh chapter. Start at Barnet, start at the Hive, and let's build a fan base.
Ron Knox. I've been a lifelong rugby league supporter. I was brought up in Warrington. I well remember the 1973 semi-final against Dewsbury, as Steve-O was playing. I've moved to London in 1981 and I've kind of followed rugby league here ever since, but certainly every season in Super League. What I'm looking forward to the most is a packed Hive, great atmosphere, and looking forward to games again. In the last 2 seasons, I haven't looked forward to games, which is not great.
Well, thank you, everyone. I know, Mark, you were throwing in from the far side of the room about Dewsbury.
Yes, I think it was 11 or 12 then, and I remember going to the game with my dad and a few of his friends, and I think I heard one of the best comments I've ever heard at a rugby league game. We're getting lots and lots of abuse from some Warrington fans.
No.
And I was a very small boy at the time, even though I was 11 or 12. And this comment came out from the guy who was taking us to a Warrington fan, and he said, "Will you shut up?" He says, "We can get a dress to fit you, we can't get enough lipstick to go around your mouth. Shut up."
I like that. That's good. Mark, thank you for that. And just pass the recorder to Michael as well, because I want to start with Michael now. It's been a very tough off-season. I'm sure we'll make references to that. And as many of you said, that the club still exists for 2014 in terms of the Broncos, and they have secured a future at the moment for 2 years. What will happen in 2015 with relegation happening this year? Who knows? But what would be a realistic finish for the London Broncos this year? And would that realistic finish, if we are talking or trying to talk realistically, and it was relegation, would that cause you a major concern? Michael, you said that you only started watching a couple of years ago and you've been hooked on it, so let's start with you. What do you think?
Well, before that, I'm from Lee, and I'm a Lee Centurions fan, but came down to London in 1984 to watch the football. Arsenal fan, and I've absolutely had enough of that because capitalist way in which the football has gone, the cheating, etc., and diving, and rugby league. I started going to the Scholars because I live in Wood Green, and then, like I said earlier, got the free ticket from the Evening Standard, Purdham's last game. Went down there and thought a £99 for a season ticket the year after was an absolute no-brainer. And I've met some absolutely wonderful people, some of them who are sat around the table here today, and others who can't be here. Completely hooked on the London Broncos. I've had to watch for the last 2 years some people who not putting the effort in on the playing side. And I do understand what other people have said on the forums, etc., about the way in which the club has been kind of run down, supporters base, etc., etc. But hopefully this year with a new start, and I know people are going to say, well, it's another new start, what's going to happen with that? You've just got to be positive. I can't do anything about what's happened in the past to the club, but you've just got to try and go forward with that and try and get as many people involved as possible. I've brought lots of people over the last 2 years to the games who will continue to come, and hopefully they can see a competitive team. And like Mark said earlier, we just want to watch these people put some effort into it and try to get as far up as they possibly can. And like I said, hopefully if 12th or above is going to be an absolute bonus, and we will be very happy. There you go. I think that's what the bottom line that we can reasonably expect.
Just realised we got 2 marks in as well, haven't we? So I have to have Dewsbury Mark and London Mark. I think that's probably the way we'll go for it. London Mark, what do you think this year? A realistic achievement for Broncos this year?
Well, I was speaking to Tony Ray a couple of days ago at the Hive, and I was joking with him about was he looking for a home playoff or an away playoff this year. My own perspective is that I don't see any reason we can't finish around 10th this season. I think if you look at the strength of the league as a whole, the teams are certainly weaker than last year, even the top teams. I mean, you look at Warrington losing players like Morley, Carvel, etc. You look at Wigan losing their better players to Australia. So I really think we can do okay this season. I think we'll see 3 or 4 new arrivals in the next few weeks, and that will significantly improve us. I really think we can finish 10th this year. I really do, and I'm really looking forward to it.
David?
I wish I could share that sort of optimism. I think it is going to be a season of enormous struggle. I think to finish above bottom will be an outstanding feat. Looking at the team, 13th, I'd prefer 12th, but 13th, even 13th would still keep up the fantastic record that the club has never finished bottom. And
well,
quite
depends on injuries, though, doesn't it?
Yes, as you say, it depends on injuries, but the reality is that this is a team that has been put together in less than 2 months. Most of the Super League teams had their entire squad sorted out in September, and there is a huge backlog that we have got to make up, which we can't make up because there isn't the time. The squad hasn't been together long enough, it hasn't been able to train together for long enough, and the reality is that no matter how hard we play, how hard we try, there are going to be some very, very unpleasant afternoons in and around London and the north of England where the team has an off day and the team they're playing has a really good day. I hope we don't have another day like we had at Gillingham last year, but I was talking to Matt Cook about that today, and he said it was one of the low points, but he said the low point of his career was the Cup semi-final against Wigan. And I think we will get relegated. I think we will finish, if not bottom, then in the bottom 2. I think there are other clubs that have big financial issues that may come to a head during the season, and wishing others ill is not good. But hey, if 2 clubs go bust, I really won't shed too many tears.
Nigel?
Well, without wishing to disrespect the players, and I think it's great that we've got the youth coming through, and I've spent many a happy afternoon in the summer down at Aldershot watching the under-15s, under-16s, under-18s over the last few years, and it's good to see them coming through. But, you know, realistically, Mark Ramo, you know, how many of our squad, I love your optimism, but how many of our squad, apart from Dixon, and possibly more if another coach took a punt on him, would actually get into another Super League squad, let alone their starting 17? I can't think of any. And therefore, I can't see any good news this season.
It's a very good point, Nigel. I understand where you're coming from. If you look at Tony Ray as a coach's record, his record is pretty close to 50-50 in his previous spell when he brought in his own players. He identified talent like Louis Luai, Dawn, Steele Retchless and many other top players. Most of the players he signed are actually unknown quantities. Nobody in here can be derogatory because they simply haven't seen them play. And therefore, they're an unknown quantity, and I feel that Tony has got a great track record for identifying good players.
But then there's an element, isn't there, with that uncertainty. I don't know. We don't know, do we, what will happen this year? And maybe the opening couple of weeks, Janet, is going to be really what makes the difference and what sets the stall out for us.
I think the opening couple of weeks probably not so much for London because they are going to take some time to gel as a team because, as people have said, they've only been together for a very short time. We're expecting more players to come in. So I think London have the potential to be able to build throughout the season. I do think it's going to be a huge uphill struggle for them, but I also think that there are a lot of players that are going to be playing for them that have got something to prove, and I think that might be really important. One of the things that has frustrated me and meant that I haven't gone to all the matches that perhaps I could have gone to is sometimes watching players not necessarily putting in 100%. Whereas I do think that you've got the potential for atmosphere in the club, for an attitude amongst players to really try and come out and prove themselves and to prove that there is a value to having London in the Super League. So that could be what takes them forward. I think it would be way over optimistic to expect anything more than 12th, but definitely would love to see them be in 12th spot at the end of the season.
I do think you're absolutely right. I mean, if we look back in the 97-98, the golden era, when London were finishing second in the Super League, they were attracting crowds of 12,000. So unfortunately, as with Tony Clubb, who was getting disheartened with the performances, the fans get disheartened with the performances. And over the last 3 or 4 years, unfortunately, you just see the crowds dwindled because primarily the performances haven't been good enough. And it's a shame. But going back to Tony Ray and the squad that he's assembled, the squad he inherited from Rob Powell is predominantly what he had to work with last year. There's nothing to say that these weren't players he might have not targeted previously if the club hadn't gone through the issues it had over the winter. So we should give them a chance. We don't know. They're unknown quantities, as we said, but you're right, Tony Raider has had an opportunity to look at the talent, and yes, there's been the rest of what's left, but ultimately, you never know.
Yeah. We're actually blessed by not only having 2 Marks, but 2 Ramos in the room.
We do,
as
yes,
well.
yeah.
How good is that?
Which one's number 1, number 2, though, Ron?
There's a few points I'd like to make. First of all, if you look at a team like Salford, they will be a team of individuals. We know that. Sometimes the individuals will spark and sometimes they won't. London, I think, will be a team, and I think they'll play as a team because there's no real superstars in the squad. And they know that they should be there for each other. The second point I'd like to make is that if we don't know what the team's going to perform, one of the benefits for that is the opposition won't know what the team's going to do either. There could be a completely unknown quantity, and I think that will be huge in the initial stages. If the team was anything like decent over the last 5 years, there'd be 100 times more guys like you. And it's the most huge frustration.
Like Michael here, yeah.
We know how good rugby league is when it's played at the top level, played with speed and confidence, and it's just the best. And so many London people don't understand that. And the other thing I'd like to say is that you're right about the semi-final. I think it was the semi-final that made David Hughes' mind up to abandon ship. And I wouldn't mind a debate if we've got time, around what you think about David Hughes, whether he's the saint or the sinner.
I'm making notes, Ron. I'm making notes. Michael, you wanted to chip in?
Yeah, just to come back on that about people like me getting into back into the rugby league after 25 years of absolutely not bothering with it at all. I think that the link up with a soccer club, football club, is much better than being with a rugby union club. Because rugby union people, and I'm going to generalise here, I don't think they're interested in that. That may be a fault of the club and the way it's gone in the last couple of years and prior to that, which I don't know about. But football fans like me should be what the Broncos are marketing to, and hopefully people will pick it up because it's the best game in the world.
Clienthouse actually feels that rugby league is more... Sorry.
Yeah, Ron, you have to grab hold.
Tony Clienthouse, in his piece with you, Ramos, made a very interesting point. He said that he thinks that rugby league's more akin to football than akin to rugby union. He thinks there's more similarities between league and football than there is between league and union. Which is, for an outsider, is a very interesting observation.
Nigel?
I mean, I totally agree that it's a fantastic game. I mean, I took 20 people to the World Cup semi-final, and what an awesome game that was. Absolutely unbelievable. Drama, excitement, skill, passion, big hits.
Anywhere last year.
Yeah, it was fantastic. But I'm worried about taking them to the Hive.
Well, I mean, we might get on to talking about the Hive later on. Let's just do a quick show of hands. I've done quite well here that I can abstain because there's 9 of you, which means we've got to go one way. Who thinks the Broncos will end up in the bottom 2 and be relegated at the end of the season? So 3 think that they won't. 6 saying that they will. What would be, I don't know who wants to pick up the recorder and answer this one, but what would be the damage done if the side were to be relegated? Mark Dewsbury.
You're talking about damage, and I've actually thought about this. I've watched rugby league, like I said, quite a long time, and what I've seen from London at the moment is the young people, the younger players coming through. They've played rugby league of all their life. They've picked up a ball up when they've been really, really young, and they've been brought through with rugby league, not any other sport. They might go on to play a bit of rugby union, but a lot of the lads they've got now look like proper rugby league players, not lads who's been playing rugby union and imported to rugby league. If we do get relegated, I think there's a really good chance with maybe a couple of really good imports that we would actually bounce straight back. If we can keep the players together, the young players together, I think we possibly bounce straight back. And what we've got to remember about all this is we're talking about individual players. It's a team. If Tony Ray and the rest of the backroom staff there get the players to bond together and play to a pattern, which we've done before. I've seen Broncos just do certain things. All the young players have come through and they've done the certain things. We can work as defence, right? Work hard in defence. That will frustrate a lot of teams who will be playing the Broncos. We should be thinking we should be 30-40 points in front now. If they're not, they'll really get frustrated. And there's hopefully one or two players amongst what we've got to actually make it to get over that line and just make a difference and obviously scratch the odd winner here and there. So I'm fairly confident.
I think relegation for the Broncos would be catastrophic, but I think it would be even worse for rugby league in general. The whole point of having a Super League and a National Super League is to have teams outside the M62 corridor. And if you have 12 teams, of which 11 are within 15 miles, say, of the M62 or Hull, at the Far East, Hull being the exception, you don't have a national game. And if it's not a national game, why should Sky invest any sort of money in a regional sport? Well, yes, but...
Doesn't matter now.
That's a different argument. Sky's needs are
No, but the point is, as almost all of coverage of rugby league nowadays is Super League and nothing else.
No, it's mixed road, isn't it?
Well,
the Championship's going to be on. The NRL's going to be
No, I'm talking about in the press rather than on television. Right. Purely and simply, in the press. How often do you see any sort of detailed reports from games in the Championship or Championship 1? They don't ever happen in the national press. And if London disappears from that, then people think, the club's gone out of business. The number of people that think the club doesn't exist anymore because of the negative publicity at the end of last year is the club going into administration. Most people believe the club went into administration or has disappeared. They haven't, but the news of them being alive still came on a Friday night just before Christmas, and most people missed it. Friday the 13th. The club is still alive. The club has got to go forward, but I think it would be disastrous for the game as a whole, not just London, if they went down.
Mark?
No response to that.
Ron, you go.
You can't have a national game and guarantee promotion and relegation. I know we've got someone from the RFL here, but you can't have the two. You can't have expansion of the game in a meaningful, equal way, and the bottom two go down. You just can't have that.
I think
that's the way the game was going.
For me,
in that controlled way.
You can, I mean, if you want to have expansion and grow the game, then there are elements that you have to remove in order to help that. Yeah. And I think that I don't know. I mean, chatting with David Hughes at the weekend and Tony Ray over the last couple of weeks, they seem to say if they were relegated, as Tony Ray says it, they take the medicine, they take the punishment, and they bounce back and they try and come back stronger. I don't think they see it as a big thing for me, and I think for maybe a lot of people in this room who see the bright lights of London, it's how much rugby league would miss, or Super League in particular, by not having that London side, and that's the image that it would send out, and I think that is more damaging. I think London, if they were relegated, would bounce back eventually. Maybe it might take 2 seasons, who knows. But I think if they can set themselves down a solid base now and build on that, then potentially they will be stronger in the future. Yeah. But I think the image it does the game, therefore the harder it makes it in London to try and get the game promoted, would be the more damaging.
Ramo, can I just come back on that? Just 1 second, please. The other key to that is what Tony Kleanthous would think after one season if the Broncos were relegated. Would he want then to stay involved?
I'll say this for one thing. Tony Kleanthous is a businessman. And if people go through the turnstiles this year and watch the Broncos, and arguably more people or a similar amount of people than go watch Barnet Football Club there, they will start to think there is potential in this. That's the key thing for him. He's taken on a lot of the costs of running the club. I had someone ring me today saying they're sorting out the match day programme. And, Barnet are taking on all these little things, all the things of the actual club and the match day experience they're doing. It's going to cost them a lot of money. But if they get people in, then they're going to think, there is potential in this. And again, it all goes down to they're going to get more people in if they're winning.
Yes.
But that's the big thing. If there's people turn up to watch this side this year, Kleanthous will see a future for it. If not, I don't think he will.
What will pack the hideout is a big away attendance as well.
Well, we can't rely on that. You can't rely on away attendance, Ken.
But on the flip side of the argument, you've got to look at how healthy the community game is. I've been involved with the community game for the last 5 years, and I was a match official, and the junior league, the open age is going from strength to strength, and then let's not do an injustice to Scholars and Hemel, I'm sure, will have their own aspirations of being in Super League 2 or whatever it may be called next year. So for the sake of rugby league, yes, I agree, Super League and having that top presence, but let's not do an injustice to the great work that's going on down below, which hopefully teams like Medway might have aspirations of being in Championship in 5 years themselves. So let's not think London Broncos is the be-all and end-all.
I think my concern is there seems to be too many who are absolutely dominant in whether there's any success for us in the future or not. And they're David Hughes and Tony Kleanthous. If the team is drubbed at home each week, I don't see Tony Kleanthous wanting to buy into the club. And I feel that David Hughes supporters become, dare I call it, fickle over the last 12 to 18 months. I feel that he's completely lost interest. I don't think he's going to stand for a series of heavy hammerings at home. For me, it could see the end of both of them, and if it does, it's the end for us. I think if the team is genuinely competitive on the field and relegated, but isn't embarrassed, then I think people will stick by the club. But I think having been in the bottom three since 2007, there's very little enthusiasm for repeated drubbings has been the case. We have to be competitive this season to survive, I feel.
I think with David Hughes, he's definitely still interested. He said to me only a couple of days ago that one of the reasons was of him keeping his money, and he didn't want to see the London Broncos name die because all those memories that he has, in particular of Wembley and all that, he wanted to keep that going. So I don't think his support, although he questioned it last year, and as you would if you were pumping in that amount of money, you'd start to think, why am I doing this? So I think it was only a natural process, and what they've gone through is almost like a strimming down, and I still think his support is there. But like you say, the big thing is wins. Really, that's what's going to make the difference this year. Really,
why am I doing this is a different argument to how am I doing it.
Very true, Nigel. I wanted to give the recorder to Ryan from Oxford, because we talk about the restructure and relegation stuff. In terms of Oxford, new into Championship 1 last year. Promotion and relegation coming back, the opportunity for you to be in, let's call it Super League 2, let's start calling it that because it's probably going to end up being that. That must be a great carrot for you for a season as a club.
I think it is. I think the key for us, particularly being such a new club, only just over a year old now, is to lay the foundation. A bit like Broncos have done, I suppose, with the community game. That's the crucial part. We need to. You speak to our chief exec, Tony Colquitt, vast experience in St Helens. He wants the game played in schools, and having rugby league clubs we've got an amateur club in Oxford. We want them to have a youth section. We want to start producing players who can go on to the first team and can go on to something further. It's probably not the right time for us to go up.
And you've got 2 good university sides as well.
Yes, we're fortunate. We've got Oxford University, who are in the top student premier competition. Oxford Brookes are well on its way. They're putting out 2 sides every week as well. So we have to remain positive, and I think we've produced some good players this year already. We've had Sean Robinson. He's signed for Dewsbury Rams this year for this season. He's getting a lot of game time in pre-season friendlies. Matty Haddon's just gone on loan to Sheffield, and obviously Sean Morris was at the Broncos on trial this year. So from our point of view, we're just going to keep building slowly and see how it goes. Really.
I think you're right saying that maybe it's not the right time for you at the moment. And so I think it's sensible. Many of the Championship ones, the new clubs are approaching it in the same way. Let's just have a quick show of hands again. If I mentioned 3/8 to you, who's a fan of the 3/8 proposal for next year? Hands up. I'm encouraging hands going up. That's a 0 to 9.
I'm abstaining.
And one abstaining as well. So not a great vote of confidence. So if you want to chip in as to why you feel that way, but David, you want to pick up on
Right, just the point about the development of the game in Oxford. It's fantastic that it's happened, and it's happening in the south of England now. But the London Broncos are almost 35 years old, and it took them 25 years to work out that it might be an idea to develop the game in the south properly. And whilst there was lip service given for a quarter of a century, there wasn't proper development. Players almost fell into their laps most of the time. And this has been one of the big problems. And the fact is that as the game is now being developed properly in the south, and for this, whatever my personal differences might be with Brian McDermott, he has done a fantastic job in setting the foundations. The amount of work that he did with schools is outstanding, and he deserves enormous credit for developing the game outside of Super League in the capital. And this is my fear, that if there's relegation, the aspiration of these players is, where are they going to go? Are they going to find a club? Will they be prepared to drop down to Championship 1 as their first entry into semi-professional paid rugby league? And I think that's where the problem would be. If there's no Super League club to aim at, that's where the problem might be.
But also you've got the factors, maybe, at the moment, the sport within London isn't at the right point to validate having the Super League spot that it has, because it doesn't have the structures behind it to be able to cope with it. Ryan,
I was just going to say, actually, from a Broncos fan point of view, I'm a little bit concerned by the structure of the squad. Even Tony Ray admitted it this week and said, they've got a lot of backs, they haven't got many forwards, and they're going to get bullied, and they're going to get. And you saw the consequences. I watched Wigan Huddersfield on Friday night. Wigan had a lot of experienced players either gone to the NRL or out injured, and their young players got bullied by Huddersfield. And, they were thoroughly beaten that day by Huddersfield, and it could have been a lot more than it was. And I think that's my concern, is that there's not enough experience in that squad up front, and they can get bullied around. But then saying that, they're kind of bringing in players. Yes, it can have a good positive effect that no one knows anything about them, but at the same time, are they kind of forgetting the players they've done so well to nurture, like Dan Sargison and Will Lovell, who have come through the ranks and are doing a good job for the Broncos, and now at Wigan, obviously, with Sargison. So I'm just a little bit concerned that they're forgetting some of the youth players that they're bringing through.
In terms of the numbers as well, at the season launch today, there was numbers 6, 7 and 8 missing from the squad list. So they're obviously positions that they know they're short on, or where they want to recruit. And I thought by leaving those numbers free as well, they're definitely, I think, saying we're looking for these players. They're not just going to fill them with players that are substandard, although I appreciate only 8s in terms of going to beef up the pack in any way, isn't it, really? Nigel, I'm glad you picked up the recorder. You can add in what you want to say, but I wanted to just pose one more question as well. How damaging has the last 4 months for Broncos been? All sorts has gone on, but how much has that process damaged the sport in London?
To be honest, amongst the wider sporting public, probably not a lot, because they're not aware of it.
Interesting point.
Amongst us fanatics, it's just turned me right off. I don't know about anybody else.
Yeah, I think you're right, Nigel. I mean, the thing that I've sort of most felt about this is I've really kind of felt, for want of a better description, mugged off. I've spoken with people at the club in the season. It sounded very much like we were on a path to finding a new home. It was, in a couple of weeks you're going to find out this, in a couple of weeks you're going to find out that. It rolled on, and then there was radio silence for 3 or 4 months. It hasn't meant I've turned my back on the club or lost any affection for the club, but I've just got such a feeling of kind of fatigue and shock towards some people still there because of the behaviour. It's just baffled me, really. It's as if that they've decided in their mind, let's just give up here, and then all of a sudden, it's the last few weeks have sort of come to life again, like Lazarus from the Bible, and it's, the thing is, I don't know.
Late than never.
I don't know why they've behaved in that way. I just find it really surprising,
I won't answer for the club. I'm not in a position to do so, but I think that a lot of it came down to the fact that they didn't have enough people to do those jobs. It's not an excuse. I'm not saying that I agree with what they did. I just think there was very few people there to do what jobs they had. And at that point, in their minds, they considered they had more important things to sort out, i.e. a future, than spend time that they didn't see as right, putting messages out to the fans.
If Lazarus a big prop.
If there's any such thing as wrong timing, though, it was an unfortunate chain of events. We had the World Cup, we had the vote postponed on the structure of the Super League, and unfortunately, until the World Cup was over and until the Super League structure was committed, it seems like that's what they were waiting for. So it dragged out longer than it should have done, and I think that's what's left a bitter taste in a lot of fans' mouth.
Nigel?
Well, it's quite interesting because I'm just looking at Facebook here on my phone, and there's a post from London Broncos RL. It's all getting close now, and the boys are going for media day today, blah, blah, blah. The Hive is a brilliant ground and to try and create a fantastic atmosphere. This is where our loyal fans come in. We know that many have already got your tickets. We want even more of you to get involved. Give us your ideas. And there's 35 comments about I'll hand leaflets out. Well, where were they in the last 6 years? Where was this attitude of help us out?
Janet?
Yeah, I mean, I do think that it's been damaging for the club. I think a lot of people will be hesitant about going. They've got to get to a new ground. They've got to find out where that is. And I think that quite a few people will think, well, I'll wait a while to see. I think there's going to have to be a really strong drive. I mean, you're saying about what's on Facebook. I know that my name has been put forward onto their mailing list several times. I haven't received a single email from the club, for example, to tell me anything about where the ground is, how I'll get there, how much a ticket would be.
It's on a team line.
Well, maybe, but, I'm the sort of person who makes decisions to go to matches. I don't have a season ticket, usually. They need to be getting people like myself and others who are going to be feeling a bit uncertain about whether or not to bother. And I say that word deliberately, bother, because I think that's the way that in people's minds it began to get towards the end of last season. You were starting to say, why do I bother? And we've really got to be able to put people's minds back, get people feeling positive. As you were saying earlier, it's really important that there's people going through the gate in order to get the commitment long-term behind the club. So I think there's a lot to be done on that, and I think we can't underestimate how big a job that's going to be.
Ron?
In the early days of Super League, what attracted a lot of people was not just the game, but the fact that it was our club, and we were all part of it, and we're all connected to it, and we're all made to feel very special by the club, all in it together. And I think that was quite absolutely unique in Super League at the time. That has completely gone now, and I'm at a loss to understand why it's gone. And the only thing I can come out with is there's been a lack of focus on communication in the club, that the people who David's brought in aren't communicators. I work in behaviour at work specialisms, and I can see from the sort of people we're dealing with here that these people are sort of cold and aloof and remote. And what you actually want to have in a club like London Broncos is exuberance, passion, commitment, enthusiasm, never say die. And forgive me, but I just don't understand why the club don't seem to understand that.
Well, you mentioned about the post going on Facebook and the rejuvenation of the Twitter feed and things. I think that's in particular because Neil Wood from the RFL has joined the Broncos. He's going to be helping them for the next few weeks, and he will be. That's possibly why you've started seeing more things like that. So I think it's definitely come from that. And I think it's interesting to say that, in other ventures that I do, in particular like the Panto that I've done, you look at Facebook, you look at Twitter, you look at the publicity that they can do. They're great, but they're only a targeted amount of people. We talk about us sat in a room as fanatics fanatical fans, there's only a certain portion. There'll be many people who've sat in the off-season not really bothered about what's happening in rugby league, maybe kept an eye on the World Cup, but because it wasn't on free-to-air television, only watched the England games. Oh, they're out. Okay, didn't bother about the final. But I think that there are people who maybe now will sit there and go, well, actually, the Broncos, they're back playing. They're at new ground, great, new area. I'm going to go and get along. There's a lot of people, I think, who are passive fans who will just come along. There's a lot of very passive, dedicated fans as well that will come along anyway, and I think that really there's a bit of an unknown as to what will happen. I think that's the big question for me for this season. Well, Ryan, you've picked up the microphone, or the recording device as it is, the MP3 recorder. Talking about the 3/8s and the restructure and stuff, and the fact of Championship 1 clubs. Are you a bit out of this now? Because it does seem like a lot of the emphasis has been about Super League and the Championship, and 5 being relegated from the Championship this year into Championship 1. Nobody's really looked at and said what's going to happen with Championship 1.
A little bit. I think it does help that they've put a message out early to say that obviously the winners of the playoffs will go up into the new Championship, or whatever they're going to call it. So it does. It'll be interesting to see how teams approach it throughout the season. I think. I think we probably have felt a little bit out of it. They've talked a lot about the 2-12s, and they've not actually said much about the teams they're relegating, which will be some big names, rugby league names anyway. Without giving any away, because I might get barraged with abuse from fans. But there is a lot of heritage up north from some clubs, and some of them will find it into Championship 1. And I think it's important from a whole game, which is I think the RFL wanted to do, is not to forget them sort of clubs and say that there is that pathway, just like other sports have got, I think.
I want to talk more about Championship 1 in a second, but fling that recorder over to Janet. I want to find out your gripes about the 3/8s. Nobody put their hand up to say they like the structure. Why not?
It's still a big unknown for a lot of us, but I've got concerns with it in terms of, as a supporter, would I buy a season ticket when I don't really know what's happening towards the end of the season? How a club's going to manage that? What's going to happen for a club in terms of its financial stability throughout the season? If you end up in moving down into the second set of 8, will a lot of the walk-up support not come? It's all quite confusing, really, from that point of view. I think also there's a lot of concern about whether or not it's fair that you're not going to be playing all teams home and away in that decider as to whether you're relegated or whether you're promoted. And I'm not entirely convinced that it's going to be able to bridge the gap between the divisions, and how will the Championship clubs be able to compete against teams that are playing with a Super League salary cap and therefore have those teams. So we're actually just going to open ourselves up to some big score matches towards the end of the season.
David?
I think it's one of the big issues, the fact that you're going to have, after effectively a regular season of 22 games, so there appears to be no talk of having another magic weekend after this season, because clearly with 22 games there can't be. If it's a 23 game season, so it's going to be 30 matches before the playoffs, whereas it's currently 27, so that's another 3 weeks of the season to find. Lord alone knows what the weather's going to be like this time next year. How are we going to get all the games played if this is the weather we're getting at the moment? That doesn't seem to make sense. The season's going to run later into September and October, which means it could be, by the time you get to grand final night, 0 degrees centigrade. That's going to be wonderful at Old Trafford with people frozen to their seats, but hey, that's the way it's going to go. I can't see the logic of 3/8. If you want to play more games, you split the division into half at the end of the start of the season. You play each of your opponents twice, and you play the other 6 teams or 6 other teams once more to get up to the 28 games. Anything else just doesn't make sense to me.
Michael?
I don't actually think it matters what we actually think about it, because that's what they've gone for. They've gone for 3/8. That's the way it's got to be, and we've just got to live with it. I do think, again, from my hometown side, Leeds Centurions, it gives them obviously a positive pathway towards trying to get into the Super League, and I think that they will invest and try and do it with the extra money they're going to get from the Sky deal, etc., etc. The positive side from the Broncos, if they do go down into that level, after having lost most of the games, and we realistically think we should win 9 to try and stay up this season. But if we don't do that, and if we do go down, then if we are in the Super League 2, as Ramo says, we may actually win some games, and a winning team may attract more people. Okay, it's not Super League, but winning, people do actually turn up and will watch that, and that's the positive that I can see out of it.
Rick? So yeah, I think the big impact might be on the players in terms of the salary cap disparity from season to season. If a team is yo-yoing between Super League 1 and Super League 2, then they might have to colour further their wage budget before the start of next season, and there's no parachute payments possibly, or we've not heard anything with regards to that as well. So it can cause massive insecurity with regards to players as well, so it may have a discouraging effect on people wanting to play rugby league at the professional level or the top level.
I think the plan is to have parachute payments.
That's good.
The thing I don't understand is there seems to be about somewhere between probably 16 to 18 clubs in this country that have probably got the ability to be professional. Why aren't they just in one league? I mean, they don't have to play each other every week, and in fact, I know I'll be reinventing the wheel, but it would be almost identical in format to the NRL. I mean, the clubs outside that 16 to 18 realistically are not going to go beyond semi-professional, and if they do, there's plenty of scope for them to be promoted without risking too many established clubs going down each year if you have 16 to 18 teams in there.
One of the points going back to the start of Super League was that it was the Super League and there was only one other division, and that's the way it was. It was only because there's been more clubs joining that you've actually got now up to 36 clubs. But the aim was to effectively have a two-tier system. But to go back to the point that Ryan made about clubs getting relegated to the third tier, almost all of the clubs that were mentioned, Keighley, Hunslet, York, the Cumbrian clubs, all of them have played in Championship 1 in the last 5 or 6 years. So this isn't new to any of them. The only really big name team who is borderline top flight, who's played at the third tier, is Featherstone, who had a couple of seasons down. Apart from that, it's always been the teams that historically were at the bottom end of the old style rugby league. So from that point of view, it's not even much of a change, it's just the different names.
I mean, to me it comes back to the issue of, is London needed in Super League, etc., etc. And I mean, I just think it's so important that there is, because of the developments of that game nationally and also expanding the gene pool of the players. I mean, how good was it to see, maybe they're not much loved Tony Clubb anymore, and Sargison playing for Wigan the other day, 2 of our homegrown boys making it into the so-called big time. You know, if you've got a kid in Dewsbury or Featherstone, or they can go and play for Leeds or Bradford. They're just down the road. Well, maybe not Bradford off this season. Down here, they've got to be playing, you know, for London. That's their aspiration. And to me, you know, why isn't there just one team in Wakefield and Castleford? I'll get sorted from Janet, but one team in Hull. Be like the NRL, as Ramos said. Be like the NRL. Pull up the team. That's it. You've got your teams, and then we might beat Australia in the future, which will be good for the game.
Do we mean a London team, though, or do we just mean a team in the south? And again, without doing justifications, you know, to London, but obviously I'm sure Oxford would have aspirations, and I'm sure other clubs may be thinking, actually, that's where we want to be. Look at how much support there was down in Gillingham, and think, if you were Medway Dragons, well, why don't we want to go into Championship in 3 years, 5 years, etc.? So I agree, and it's another thing for the match officials as well, and they have the same aspirations. Some of the young kids that we've got, 18, 19, 20, they want to be in Super League, they want to referee Super League, but it's important for them to have academy product, Championship product and Super League product, so they can progress through the pathway. So yeah, it's very important to the officials as well as to the players as well.
I think the problem most people have with the 3/8 is it doesn't resolve the real issue. The real issue is there isn't enough money in the game that's spread around thickly enough to cover lots of different clubs. So just rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic isn't really much of a solution. There's still huge inequality. And until we find someone at the RFL who can actually go out and gain some significant sponsorship and actually be a tough TV negotiator, then this problem will persist.
Again, I think the structure has been fixed. The TV deal has been fixed until 2021. I don't actually think there's any point discussing any of that anymore, because the Rugby League, Football League, have gone down a route. They've signed to this. All I can see is that, from a London point of view, that the club has got to be made sustainable. Whether that's in, if we do finish 12th or above in Super League this year, and we can build on that and get the people in and get the sponsorship and Selco, etc., more, or if they do go down, be sustainable at that lower level and bounce back as a winning side. There's got to be some level where it does actually stop yo-yoing about. Are we going to watch the same thing that we've done for the last 2 years, which has been appalling, or are we actually going to push forward with lots of hungry younger players to try and keep London going and try and keep the likes of the Oxford, Hemel and the Scholars with players that don't actually make Super League grade? And that's what I would like to see, sustainability.
If you look at the Football Premier League, the top 8 are so much in front of the rest of the teams that if you was to suddenly reduce that league from 20 to 12, then you'd see the bottom 4 lose most weeks, which is exactly the same as what Super League is. So I can understand why the RFL, because if you look at the top 8, and I consider the bottom of them to be Catalan, Hull and Hull KR, 3 good teams, significantly better than the bottom 6. So I could see why the RFL would want more matches between teams of a similar level. I just don't understand why they don't just make the league itself bigger. I mean, it just seems such an obvious solution. Then half your games become winnable.
Well, pretty enough about the 3/8, but let's talk about the Championship, because before we started recording, I asked people, do they go watch Scholars, Hemel, Oxford, University of Gloucestershire, Old Gold? Where do we stand about the state of the game, Championship-wise? I'll offer the recorder to anyone who wants to pluck it out of the air, but where are we in terms of the South teams doing well? Because I think if you, like Michael says, we're stuck with this format now for the next number of years, okay? So is this not a great opportunity to have a long-term business plan? Let's say wherever the Broncos end up at the end of 2014, you then set your stall out, say this is what I want to do over the next few years. I think it's quite a good structure for emerging teams to work their way through.
By hook or by crook, 2013 was unique in the history of rugby league, in that the third tier was a genuinely national league. North Wales, South Wales, Tyne and Wear, 2 teams in Lancashire, 1 team in the West Country, 1 team, did you describe Oxford? Midlands, South Midlands?
Lots of bicycles.
Well, no, as a serious point. Okay, call it Southwest Midlands or whatever. It's certainly outside of the London area, so it's not a London team. You've got Hemel just to the north of London and London Scholars. A genuinely national division. Championship, entirely Heartlands. So you had a completely national league in the third tier, and the rest of it was almost as it's ever been, M62 corridor with the exception of London and Catalans in Super League. And next year it'll be different because you've got North Wales. Okay, it's not that far from Widnes, I know, and it was Rochdale that got promoted, so disappointingly it wasn't one of the non-Heartlands teams. But to get in next year there are going to be Heartlands teams playing in all 3 tiers, and that's very important. And this is why I say it's so important for there to be a non-Heartlands team in England in Super League.
Michael?
Yeah, I think that the problem I've got with the Sky deal is 80% of the new Sky money goes into the Super League. 19% goes into the Super League 2 or Championship level, and 1% goes into the Championship 1. And I actually believe that the Championship 1 side, David said, it's a national league. They deserve a lot more investment. So the likes of Oxford, the likes of Gloucester, the likes of Hemel actually get more money develop the sport. My team, the London Scholars, a good thing this season is that Fusion, who actually have got the 50-year lease on the ground, are going to spend £600,000-700,000, whatever it is, on a 4G pitch, and actually put money into doing the clubhouse up, doing the bar up, etc., which is investment, which is obviously positive for that. But out of that, the other clubs need investment to try and attract players, to try and breed their own players, so they can actively carry forward Super League throughout the country and as the national game.
And Scholars have recruited pretty well as well this year. They did quite well off the fallout of Broncos, unfortunately, when a few of the players went. And I know there's Lamont Bryan's back as well. So I think they've recruited very well. So there's still an appeal there. It's still a very attractive league to play in. Doesn't matter what level you've played at before. The question is, will it be when there's 1% of the Sky money go into it? So that is the fundamental question that probably will need answering. I'm sure Ryan might have a bit more.
Yeah, I think it's, like we said, we talked about investment and, monies, portion of monies, as David said as well, is that, it's a very national league championship one. And for it to be national, obviously means a lot of mileage that you have to do, for example. And, coach bills for all of the South clubs are, almost into, five-figure sums, and they cost, you consider staying over. A lot of clubs don't tend to now to save money for obvious reasons. So, I think that's why it was crucial to some more monies to go into the Championship 1 clubs, just to give them some help so they can spend more money on quality players maybe as well coming down.
Could you envisage a scenario then next year where the 30 is in fact split into North and South, bearing in mind of that?
I think they have talked about that, haven't they? I don't know what's... I'm not sure... if that was talked about at the championship meetings they had last week. I think they went off to. There was talk they were doing it regionally. I think there's a split camp. I think some want to do it in National League still, because they think that it gives fans the opportunity to see North and South clubs. And speaking of from Oxford, a lot of fans came down. We were fortunate enough last year for 2 minibuses of Castleford fans to come through on the way back from the London Broncos to watch our game versus Oldham, I believe, if I remember rightly, and they set their banners up in the corner of the stadium, and they had a good old time. So, I think fans enjoy coming down south, and southern fans enjoy going up to the heartlands. We're all looking forward to going to York this year and Hunslet and the usual places we went to last year. So, I think it gives a variety for fans as well, and fans enjoy going to different places. And if you kept going to the southern clubs, no disrespect to any of them at all, would it get a bit boring? And and speaking to people, particularly in Oxford, we do a lot of work with the ice hockey team, and they were a national team and they were getting sort of crowds of 3,000 people plus to games. Then the leagues, the national governing body decided to regionalise it, and now they're only getting crowds of 500. So they're building their way up. So is that a sign that of what fans think? Who knows the answer to that question, really, I suppose. But it's an interesting time, I think. Like David said, is that there's a lot of good rugby played at Championship 1 level. We've been involved with many games at Scholars and the All Golds, and last season, we saw what was it, 36-40 and a 30 all draw, and a few sending offs, a few fights, and so exactly. So it was an exciting game. So it's there's a good product there, really. It's just it needs to be sold right, I think, really, and there's good people who are doing that at Championship 1 clubs. Most of them volunteers, so they're all working hard, and we're trying to get fans in the gates and show them what a fantastic product rugby league is generally. So we'll keep continuing.
Well, time flies, so we're going to have to draw to a close Rugby League Down South, the Pubcast II, in just a second. But before we do, let's go back round the table, the opposite way that we went before, and let's go for something along the lines of your message or your overriding feeling going into 2014, and sort of either something you'd like to say, something how you feel, or something you project or would like to think or predict for 2014. So, Ron, we will start with you.
How about if you don't use it, you'll lose it? So we've got the resurrection. I think we have to make the most of it, and we have to give it 100% ourselves. People around this room are evangelists for the game in the South, and if we feel positive, if we feel good, that message will spread.
Thank you, Ron. Ryan?
Yeah, I think, we have to build on, the World Cup success. Like we said, we all said in this room that, the England-New Zealand game, I was, fortunate enough to be at and a spectator at, was one of the best games, well, actually probably the best game that you saw, last year. And we have to build on that, and, Broncos have got, a great chance to, start again, start afresh, and, they've just got to. You just got to make sure we do it in the right way. It's a good area they're in. A very football orientated area, and I believe that if they get it right, then the fans will come.
Nigel, I wasn't sure whether you'd be here, not necessarily in this room, but supporting Broncos in 2014, the way things went last year. I mean, what are you feeling ahead of this season?
I won't go to the Hive until certain things change, apart from to watch Catalan Dragons play there. Good luck to them.
Janet,
good luck.
Sorry. Janet.
Good luck to Broncos. I mean, I hope that they do manage to end up 12th. I think the most important thing, though, is being able to get people to go to the Hive. So I think they need to take some really important action in drumming up the support.
Mark?
Right. I think what we've got to remember, as was been said earlier, rugby league is absolutely fantastic product. People, you need to get out there and watch it. Yes, the Super League. Super League is the pinnacle of rugby league. But there's also your other clubs out there like Scholars, Hemel, Oxford and Gloucester. Get out there, watch them. You'll have a great time. People will go watch it. Great people. And for sport, you won't beat it.
Michael, on to you.
Same old story. London Broncos finished 12th. Scholars actually win it and go up, and that would make me very happy.
I'm sure you would. Many others as well. Rick?
I'm going to be shameless and look at it from a match official's point of view, and I think the euphoria of the World Cup from 2013 got a lot of people talking about rugby league. People on Facebook that were commenting they've never seen a rugby league match, saying that was the best game they've ever seen, in the England-New Zealand game. And last year we managed to get record numbers on the match official course, and that was before the World Cup. And I just want to be able to build and get people involved, whether it is playing or coaching, but from my point of view, from officiating as well, because the more officials we can get on, the more games that can take place, and the more we can help support London Broncos with the player pathway and development in their academy as well, and Oxford as well, of course.
And Rick, before you pass the microphone on, think about this very carefully before you answer. Where did you get your glasses from?
Boots.
Incorrect. David?
Two things. One, that Broncos are better off the field and on the field than they have been in recent years. The complete lack of connection between the fans and what's happened behind the scenes has been calamitous, and it's put off so many people. But the thing that I want more than anything else, and this, you were witness to it, and you were witness to it as well, Ryan, and I think you were, Mike, too. Calamitous injury suffered by Smokey Junior in the the London Challenge game against Wigan. He suffered a very, very nasty injury, and wish him a quick and speedy recovery and back on the field sooner rather than later.
Absolutely. I think I mentioned it in one of the previous podcasts, but I suspected broken femur, did have surgery and was back at training the other day to see the lads on crutches, I'm sure, but things going in the right direction. Well, yeah, not a great injury. And so, Mark, we finish with you. I think before we go any further, can we just say thank you to Mark for sorting anything? He's been a great host. He also shares my nickname. And my dad used to teach him. Yeah, we don't share the same surname though, so not quite.
A similar one, Mike.
A very similar one, Mark. Your feelings, your thoughts ahead of 2014.
Well, for me, rugby league is It's probably the most wonderful part of my life, apart from my wife. It's fantastic.
Well done, well rescued.
To me, it becomes, you become part of the club. You could become part of a family, and I don't think people understand necessarily the emotion that you feel and connection towards the club. The club has been bad, but we're getting back together again, and we're going to go on and do some good things next year. I really feel that.
So rousing, rallying call from Mark. Thank you for that. Thank you for you all for turning up for the second edition of the podcast. I did say this last year that I would try and arrange another one in the season. We will maybe try and do that in the season again this year, and get a few more people together to discuss the season. I hope you all enjoy the season. Fingers crossed that things go well for Broncos and for Scholars and for Hemel and for Oxford and for Gloucestershire and in fact for the whole game as well. That's all we want to see. I think everyone here just wants to see rugby league succeed and grow and get better in the future. So that's
Ramo, we have to thank you as well, because your efforts on a voluntary basis, doing all the podcasts, is immense, and we're all grateful to you.
Well, no, I've always said no, thank you, and it's great. The reason that I do it is because I enjoy doing it, and it's such great fun, and the access you get. Nobody ever says no, and there's great fans like you that come together. When I ask for a few people to sit around a table to discuss the season, I can go and request interviews. I can turn up at training grounds and people will talk to you and be nice to you and give you interviews and tell you things. So it's an absolute pleasure for me to do it, and I really enjoy it. Now, if I didn't enjoy it, promise me I wouldn't do it.
It's not football,
it's not football. Although my other job is working on football for the next 10 weeks anyway. Thank you all for coming. Thank you for listening for the to the Rugby League Down South podcast as well. We're back next week. We talked about Championship 1 a fair bit. I'm going to do a Championship 1 special next week, so I will catch up with all the Southern Rugby League Championship 1 clubs, and that will be the next edition of Rugby League Down South. But thank you all for listening and downloading this. Go tell your friends, and get your friends to tell their friends as well. Thank you for listening.
Well done, mate.